So the topic for today is DevOps. So we are going to understand the introduction of DevOps. So why we needed DevOps in the traditional IT market, as as we see in 90s, right? So the traditional way of developing an application was based on the waterfall model, which take around 6 months to an year to develop a single product, and which on the basis of like 90% of the products were failed because there was a requirement gap between the design of the product and what the product has been delivered. So now DevOps has came in the market and has pitched in so that that gap of the requirement is filled up with the meaningful and the continuous integration and the feedback which came from the customer. So let's begin now. So for the next 40 minutes, like here is the content which we will be talking about. So the first is the introduction to DevOps. Second would be how the journey of DevOps is. Then the third is why we need DevOps in the traditional IT market. Then we are going to understand the difference between the traditional IT trend and the DevOps. And then we will be focusing on the DevOps architecture, lifecycle principles and tools. And then we are going to take a case study of the world's largest bank, that how they adopted the DevOps technology and how they have evolved it, and what are the advantages that they have seen. And then we are and then we will focus about the responsibilities of the DevOps engineer, that if anyone wants to become a DevOps engineer, so what will be the daily work or the role and responsibilities of that person. And once you want to become a DevOps engineer, so what are the steps you need to follow to become that? So after that, we will be focusing on that, and then we will have a question and answer session. So let's start. So we are going to first talk about the introduction of DevOps. So DevOps is a combination of two words, as we can see, like the first is dev and the second is ops. So dev is the development team who is going to develop the code based on the requirements which the BA takes. And the operations team are the people who basically settles the environment or the infrastructure on which the war or the product is going to be deployed. So it's a combination of dev and the operations team. So it allows a single team to basically handle the entire application cycle. So from the requirement gathering to the deployment of the application, each and everything, like all the things are managed by a single team only. So that is from the development to testing to the requirement, and at the same time, the operations. So DevOps basically helps us to reduce the disengagement between the developers, QA, DevOps engineers, and the system administrators. So all come in sync together and work as a single team so that they can accomplish the common goal. So it also promotes the collaboration between the dev and the operations team so that they can deploy the code in the production environment in a faster and an automated way, so that there should be a very less manual intervention, because due to the manual intervention, there can be a problem that some human error may occur, which can burst up the application in the production environment. So with the minimal manual usage or with the minimal manual intervention, it helps or promotes that the application is well tested and it is ready to be deployed in the production environment. So it also increases the organizational speed to deliver the applications to the client or the product owner. And at the same time, it also helps the organizations to cater their customers with a better service and compete more strongly in the market. As we know, like that for the development or like the service-based companies, there are lots of players in the market. So they also need to compete with each other, right? Because if, for example, if I have a application for which there is a bidding of 7 to 8 companies, so they need to focus that, okay, in how much time they can deliver the product. So what will be the quality of the product? What are all the factors on which the product development would be taken care of? So all those things play a vital role or an important role while a project is being delivered. So the DevOps helps in all those factors. And apart from that, it's also become a valuable business discipline for the enterprise and organizations. So DevOps can also be defined as a sequence of development and IT operations with the better communication and collaboration. As we can see, like all the teams, like the development team, the QA team, the DevOps team, the system administration team, each and every team comes together and work as a single team. So there is a better communication and the collaboration, which makes the product and the quality of the product more efficient and more effective. And it also helps to, to get the better feedback and work on the quality enhancement of the product. So next is the journey of DevOps. So the journey of DevOps basically started in 1957 when the first computer programmer write code using the Fortran language. So the first time the Fortran language was used to write a computer program where the first developer job was being created. And then significantly in 1969, ARPANET launches the first network engineers jobs and network operation centers. And similarly in 2003, the Ben was hired to lead a team of 7 software engineers to run a production environment at Google, creating the first set of site reliability engineers. So as we know that the DevOps has the major role of site reliability engineers, as they need to rely on the servers, on the support, and also need to check that all the deployable artifacts are properly placed. So also they need to check the background checks of the environment, that okay, if there is a Java application, so if the Java is installed on the servers or not, is the JDK version correct being deployed. So all those things are dependent on the site reliability engineers. And in 2009, John and Paul Hammond of Flickr presented a 10 plus DevOps per day, showing the methodology of DevOps. Like they have deployed 10 plus deployable artifacts daily. So that basically created the methodology of DevOps, that how, like using DevOps, how we can make our release faster, how in how much less time we can do a lot of releases in the market. So in 2009 only, Patrick Debois organizes the first DevOps day in Belgium. And in 2012, Splunk and SolidWinds were the first DevOps software tools signed IP of $1.5 billion, showing a growth potential on this industry. So as we can see, now we have a basic understanding of DevOps. So we can see that how much there is a growth potential of DevOps in the market, because it helps us to, to eradicate all those things which created the problem for us in the waterfall model. So in 2013, the Puppet Labs releases the first state of DevOps survey, highlighting the health and trends of the industry. In 2017, the Blue Metadata monitoring platform launches the combining AI-powered server monitoring and centralized logging under one login. So what it does, like if once we more dive into the DevOps things, so we will understand about Splunk logging technology, that okay, through a single report only, a single dashboard, we can get all the reporting of the application, that after our war or the product is being deployed on the production environment or on the production server. So what is the performance of my application, how it is performing, is it going good or not, like what all logs are there, if you want to track down any defect or anything, any bug. So all those logging tools basically helps us in tracking down and finding the solution easily. If we don't have any these tracking tools, then it would be very difficult for us to understand that what went wrong, and we have to basically do a hit and trial to make that to occur that error again and find out the root cause. But due to these logs, we don't need to do that. We can directly check the logs and find the root cause of the issue. So as we have talked much about the DevOps journey and what is DevOps, so now we will talk something about why we need DevOps. So the development team and the operation team works in complete isolation. So when the DevOps was not there, so the dev team and the operations team have their own timelines. So they don't basically have a better communication. They don't communicate with each other. They work in silos, right? So due to that, what happened is, like, they don't understand the requirement of each other. So for example, there is a timeline that a product needs to be delivered in next 3 months. The dev team have the knowledge about that, but the operations team is unaware about that timeline. So they don't know that what needs to be done. So this created a lot of confusion during the product release, as both teams were not communicating and they don't have any idea. So they were not focused that, okay, what we need to achieve. So so due to this, a lot of issues and a lot of failures were happening in the waterfall model. But now, as we move to agile, we have adopted DevOps. So like each and every individual of the team knows about what the timelines are. They have a better communication. They work as a one team. They act as the owners of the product which they are delivering. So they have the more like the more control and the reliability on the product. They focuses more on the product development rather than doing the like the documentation or the requirement gathering. The requirement gathering is needed, but not on a large scale. Like for example, if I have to make a product like of a login application, so first time I know that, okay, 3 buttons are required. So first two will be the text of username and password, and one will be submit. So at least I can first make that page and showcase to my product or the business owners that, okay, here is the basic frame. Do you like it? Do you know what the next idea is? So earlier what happened in the waterfall model, like they have a complete timelines of 6 months. So after 6 months, like they go to their product owners and showcase what they have done. And if for example, let's take that, if the requirement, there is a requirement gap, if there was like not only two, there was 4 fields needed with the username, password, some captcha, and some other stuff. So that leads to a failure of the application, right? Because we have spent it 6 months, so all those 6 months go in vain. But in DevOps, like you can showcase your product in each sprint. Like after a 5 to 10 days, you can go to your product owner, the business owners, and showcase that, okay, in what all bits you have developed. So if they ask you to make any changes, it becomes very easy to implement that rather than implementing the same thing at the end of the product journey, right? So the second point is the manual code deployment will lead to human errors in production. Yes, because as like we are all are humans, so we can make mistakes. But if we automate that and reduce the manual intervention, so that will make my code more robust and my testing more robust, so that I would be more confident in going in taking my product to the production. And if I only rely on the manual testing, manual coding, and some basic code factor, that may lead to the failures and we might need to roll back. And the third most important, like we have already talked, that the coding and the operations team, like the development team and the operations team have the separate timelines. So they were not in sync. So they don't have the knowledge about what they are going to achieve. So all the team needs to come under one roof. They should think as a one team. They should take the ownership of the application. They should support the application from the scratch until the deployment of the application in the production. So they should work as owners of the application. So as we can see in the image, like we have the business benefits of DevOps, like we get a fast solution, we have an increased efficiency, we get a more improved customer experience as we showcase and take the feedback from the product owner. So what happens, it basically helps us to improve the customer experience. So faster ROI is there. So we have improved performance as we have multiple monitoring tools to monitor the performance of the application in the production environment. So by using those tools, we can basically monitor the application and find that, okay, what is lagging and how we can improve. So continuous improvement is also a major factor in DevOps. Like we have to improve in our day to day. Like for example, in the first release, the page load time was around 1 second. So now I would try in the next version, I must try to reduce the page load time to some microseconds or some milliseconds, because there is always a scope of improvement. So we should always work on that improvement, and that will basically what happens is it is going to reduce the failure and the rollbacks, because we are continuously improvement. We are improving our versioning, we are improving our coding standard, we are improving in terms of testing, we are doing more of automation testing, we are reducing the manual intervention. So all this will lead to the reduced failures and the rollbacks. So the next is the difference between the traditional IT trend versus DevOps. So like we have already talked, like the traditional IT trend was less productive, as they were more focused toward the documentation of the requirement, taking the BRDs, and like multiple approvals were required during that time. So for a journey of 9 months, so the first 4 to 5 months were only focused on the documentation, requirement gathering, so making the things finalized. But what DevOps does is, so like if we have a piece of code, if we have a piece of requirement that needs to be coded, we first code that. We just take that in our backlog, create a kind of a like checklist what we need to do, and then we first deliver that small piece of code to our product owners or the business owners, showcase them that okay, whether it is working good or not, any feedback you want to give, like any changes you want to make. So that becomes more productive, and also at the same time, like we get a continuous feedback, so there is more chances of improvement and less chances of rollbacks or the failures. So in the traditional IT trend, like we have skill centric teams, right? So we have multiple teams, like only for the testing, only for development, only for the requirement gathering. But in DevOps, like the teams are divided into the specialized groups. Like in one team, we will have all the people. Like like if we go to the core fundamental of DevOps, so there we don't have any dev, we don't have any QA, we don't have any site operations. We all are the team members who can do anything what is needed. So that makes the team more united, so that they should be able to help each other and learn more. So that continuous learning and continuous improvement is the main pillar of DevOps. So more, like we have already talked, like more time was invested in planning in the traditional IT trend, where in DevOps, like we have a small and frequent releases. Like in every after every sprint or after every 6 to 9 days, we have a small release which basically showcase the small pocket or a small piece of software which we have developed for the product. And in traditional IT trend, we only have a release after the end of the development and the testing is done. Like for example, if we are planning it for today, so the end product will get delivered after 9 months. And there might be a chance that in this process of 9 months, my requirement might get changed. Like I am, so currently, like my requirement is my website color, background color should be blue. But as I move to 3 months or 4 months, I think that, okay, let's now move it, make it to yellow or green. So, but at the first only in the traditional IT trend, we have fixed our requirement. We have signed the BRD that, okay, here is the business requirement documentation is complete. And now we don't, and we will not take any more changes. So at the end of that 9 months, my product is not being delivered for what I am looking for. So that leads to a lot of failure. But in DevOps, like we have frequent releases and the continuous interaction and feedback with the product owner or the business team. So they help us to understand that what gaps we have in the requirement and how we can fill it. So in the traditional IT trend, like all the teams works on silos, so it becomes very difficult to achieve the target and the goals, because there was less communication, less interaction between the teams. They have their own timelines, so they don't have the complete or the big picture. So they don't understand the big picture. So that's why there is always a difficulty to achieve a common goal and the target. But in DevOps, everyone is aware of what is happening. Like each team is continuously interacting with each other, taking the feedback from the product owner or the customer. What happens is it becomes very easy to achieve the target and the goals, because they don't set the goals for the next 6 months. They set the goals for the first 2 weeks. Okay, for the first 2 weeks, like if I'm going to make a login page, so I should only focus on the login page. we should not think more beyond than that. So based on the priority, they takes the work and first try to wrap up that piece of code and then move to the next slide. But in the traditional IT way, they focuses on the complete picture first. Like they don't work in bits. They take the whole lot of work and then they divide it into the multiple teams who don't interact with each other. And at the end of that, they are not able to achieve the targets. So the next slide talks about the DevOps architecture. So first is the build. So without the DevOps, the cost of the consumption of the resources was evaluated based on the predefined hardware automation. Like all the costing and everything was predefined. Like we first defined, okay, like I need 4 servers, so 3 people will be 3 resources will be required. I need for example 16 GB of RAM. So everything was predefined, right? But with DevOps, like the usage of cloud and the sharing of the resources, the build is now dependent more on the user need. Like for example, if the client needs, okay, I need to scale now, like first, if the client requirement was to only deploy the application on a single server, but after a successful release of the product and everything goes good, and if the business or the product owner wants to scale up his piece of code and wants now to get it deployed to multiple servers, so that was not being supported in the waterfall model. But being in the DevOps, the usage of cloud and the sharing of the resources, like it becomes very easy to scale up my application. So it gives us the more control and the flexibility of the usage. So like earlier, like everything was fixed, but now we have a flexibility, okay, that based on the requirement we can either scale up or scale down my environments. So the second one is code. So in code, so the coding is the most essential thing in the DevOps. Like whatever the requirements is, we need to write the code for that, right? Then only it can be deployed and it becomes a useful product for the customer. So in DevOps, we basically use the Git to commit the code and keep the code in the cloud environment, which basically helps us down to track the business logic, the code changes, and also helps us to get notified about the reason behind the difference in the actual and the expected output. So we get a complete picture, okay, that what all code has been committed, who has committed the code. If anything goes wrong, then we can directly roll back or revert our code changes. So all those flexibilities are being given by the Git tool, which is like a major player in the DevOps engineering. So the code is managed properly and can be reused by the other projects as well. So as the code is not in any local machine, it is in a cloud environment, then we can directly reuse the same code for developing the other products as well. So the third is the test. So testing of the application plays a very vital role in the successful release of a product. As we can see, like we not only development, but testing is equally important. So a complete testing of the product is required before the release of the product in the production environment. So manual testing, so first we should understand that how many types of testing are there. So on a high level, like we have only 2 types of testing. One is the manual and second is the automation testing. So manual testing takes or consumes a lot of time in testing and may affect the release deadline. And because the manual intervention is there, so there is a possibility of some human errors also in the application. Like for example, if I'm testing an application of a login page, so there might be a case like I have missed something. I might have missed a test case which might break my application in the production environment, like some regex checking has been missing. Like, okay, so in the password, like I should not uh, allow the space, right? So there should not be any space either in the password or in the username. But if I miss that test case while testing my application, so that is going to break the application in production. So but using the automation testing, which also consumes the less time to test the complete application, and automation scripts can also be reused and run on multiple servers. So as we have the automated script, so we can track down all the things which we have done. So we can reuse that scripts as well, the automation script for the regression testing, stress testing of the application. So, but the manual testing, it is like we can say that only 50% we can give the assurity that everything will work good. But with the automation testing, like we are getting the reports, we are getting all the screenshots, everything in a single dashboard. So it also becomes very easy to manage all the test cases. Like there is a minimal chance of breaking the code in the production environment. So next is the plan. So in the traditional IT trend, like waterfall was widely used, in which the design and the requirement gathering consumes a lot of time, and a very less time was given to the dev team or the QA team to develop and test the applications. Hence, it affects the efficiency and the quality of the product being delivered, and there is a chance of a requirement gap of what the business needs versus what is being delivered. But now the DevOps uses the agile methodology to plan the development with the operations and the development team being in sync. It also helps the organization to work and to plan accordingly, which increases the productivity and also increases the frequency of the release of the product in multiple phases. Like we can have a better planning and we can do multiple releases. Like if anything goes wrong, the rollback is also very easy to do, and we can easily fix my production issue. But in the waterfall model, if we follow that, then rollback was a very difficult task. It took around a day or more than a day to just roll back my application. But being in the DevOps, it is a matter of just a few clicks. So all those things are play a vital role while developing a product. So fifth point is the monitor. So continuous monitoring is used to identify any risk of failures. Like once the code is being deployed in the production environment, we need to monitor each and every thing. Like we have the logs, we need to monitor that how the performance of the application is, how the health of the application is working. So we need to take care of all those things. We need to track down all those and work accordingly. So the monitoring becomes more comfortable by using the third-party applications like Splunk, which store the log data and also helps us to filter out the log data based on multiple parameters. So for all these monitoring things, we like mostly we use Splunk in the IT industry, which basically store the logs for the 90 days. So you can filter out the logs based on your requirements. So for example, like I know my application got stuck yesterday or day before yesterday. So I can filter the log based on 24 hours, 48 hours, 7 days. So all those logs will be given. So whatever, so for example, like if anything goes wrong with the login, so I can basically check that, okay, the login operation got failed. So I can search for the service name as login and filter out the logs and can go to the log and check that what went wrong. So it also helps us to track down the defect, and it also takes a very less time to figure out the issue. But in the waterfall model, like it becomes a very difficult or a challenging task to identify the issue. It takes around a weeks to identify the issue because we don't have any logging monitoring tool. So that's why DevOps play a very important role. So next point is the deploy. So DevOps supports schedulers for the automation deployment of the application. So like we have schedulers, like for example, if I want to deploy my application tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., so I can schedule my deployment in my electric flow pipeline that, okay, by tomorrow 9 a.m., my war or the packaging jar should be staged from the testing environment to the to the production environment. So all those staging and everything is being done without any manual intervention. So everything is being automated. So that cloud management platform also enables to capture the accurate insights and the view of the optimization scenarios, analytics and trends. So once we deploy it, so everything is going good or not, we can also check with the monitoring tool, which is there in the electric flow pipeline. So once we move to DevOps, so everything comes in a like in a triggering event, or like is in a build. So after each and everything, every task is completed, the next task is going to be executed automatically. And if anything goes wrong, then all the things will be rolled back by its own. We don't need to go ahead and do it manually. So the seventh point is the operate. So DevOps changes the way of traditional approach of developing and testing separately. So the teams operate as a one team and actively participate throughout the life cycle of the product. That is from the requirement gathering to the deployment of the application. So the operations team and the development team work together and come up with a plan to serve the business requirement. As they work as a one team, they don't work in silos. So they have a complete picture. They take the complete ownership of the application and work as a single team. So the last point is release. So deployment of the application is done by automation. Like we use the electric flow pipeline to deploy the application in the production. So we don't have any manual intervention while deploying our app. We use just electric flow pipeline, or sometimes we like that depends on multiple servers. Like if we have electric flow, we are using Docker, or we are using Kubernetes, then we can like all those tools or all those containerization environments have their schedulers, which basically helps us in deployment in a automated way. We don't need any manual intervention.